this week's webinar, NCF webinar. This week we're being joined by Tem Nugmanov, who is one of the world's leading experts on Notion. Tem, thanks for joining us. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. So, I've personally had the privilege of checking out Tem Notion setup before, and it is mind-blowing. It's like a digital brain, and he's a complete master of productivity. So I'm looking forward to finding out how to get the most out of my productivity as well. So if anyone has any questions, we can post them in chat during the presentation. I'll be setting those.
Stiamo dicendo la stessa cosa. Sto dicendo, per me è molto più.
It's always hard to see who's not muted. Okay. So yeah, feel free to post them as we go. As always, the format's pretty casual. I'll hand over to Tem, but and at the end we will have time for Q&As. So so you can also leave your questions until then. But Tem, pass over to you.
Awesome, thank you. I am gonna screen share once you let go of the screen and show a little presentation that I had, but we will keep it low key. So here we are. Okay, gonna put up a little gallery. All right, so hi everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces and some people that I probably never met. I'm going to introduce myself first. So my name is Tem. I go by Tem, so a lot easier than my full name. I'm originally from Kazakhstan, and I am currently in New York. And as far as my introduction in context of this talk, I'll say that I started college in New York in 2015, and also a startup called FitAI at the same time. And even though the company failed and I did not graduate from college, across all those domains, I found myself really obsessed with tools. And some call this productivity tools, some call this tools for thought, organization, you name it. But really, I was sort of oddly obsessed with a lot of things that you might be familiar with, right? Google Sheets, Asana, Airtable, Zapier, and of course, Notion. And so in the time between 2015 and 2020, I should say that I went through all of those tools and really mastered a lot of them. And at the same time, fell in love with Notion, which is a weird thing to say about a piece of software, but throughout the course of this presentation, you'll see a little bit on why. In 2020, I also started optimization. So this sort of came from my individual consulting experience. At first, I was just charging $15 per hour for setting up a Notion workspace or teaching someone how to use something in Notion, or setting up automations and stuff. But really, since then, and by the way, we started in March 2020, so positioning ourselves as a remote work productivity agency was actually good timing. So in terms of optimization, it has changed a lot in the past 2 years, but right now we really aligned ourselves on a mission to help or work with distributed and remote teams and help them create systems and habits and processes that really help them fundamentally operate better, be more productive, but really as a result of gaining more autonomy, trust, and collaboration. It's been 2 years, as I said. It's about 13 people now, and we try to be as I guess transparent in terms of all kinds of metrics. And so our current revenue is 60,000 per month, and some of our clients include some familiar logos like Discord and stuff, but really mostly smaller startups that are sort of in the weeds of launching their businesses. Now, the plan for today is basically for me for about solid 20 minutes to fanboy about Notion and try to convince you to fanboy with me. But I also promise that I think some things will be thought-provoking and impactful in relationship to personal and organizational productivity. we might just breeze through a couple things in the beginning, but what I would love to have is a poll run. And this is about your experience with Notion. So Josh, if you want to launch this one, this will help me kind of gear the pace of the presentation. So the question is, what is your experience with Notion? And the answers are not very standard, but you could say no idea what it is, learning, it's cool, I get it and I like it, I mastered it and I use it daily and weekly, and I tried it, but I do not like it.
So I'm just going to share it with everyone. It's just taking a second to all get loaded up. Give me 1 second.
Sure. Oh, we've got David in the house as well. Wow, it's basically me and my friends in the Zoom chat. I already know that there are a few people here that have mastered Notion and using it daily and weekly. So wait, I don't see the poll still.
It's not working here.
No working. Yes, I totally. David says these slides are so Notion. I totally copied them from Notion branding. So yeah. Anyway, how about we're only 20 participants, so can people just say in the chat real quick? Oh, never mind. There we are.
There we go.
Okay. So please give me a quick response. There's only 20 people, so might be just real quick. All right, so if whoever just joined, we're running a poll in your experience about Notion that will help gear the presentation a little bit. All right, Josh, let's close it up and see what we got as far as the results. All right, cool. So we got a few people who have no idea. Learning's cool. Blah, blah. Okay, cool. So good news is that everyone likes it. So that's awesome. So based on this, we're gonna go a little bit sort of like moderate pace in the beginning, explaining like the sort of background behind Notion, and then really get a little bit deeper in terms of like my usage and sort of like the founder fit that I see. So all right. So for people who are sort of just getting into it or have no idea what Notion is, I'm gonna essentially expose my opinion on Notion, just because it's a software that doesn't have always an opinion on how it should be used, but instead it's very ubiquitous and applicable in all kinds of use cases. To me, it's a workspace for notes and project management and documents and collaboration, sort of the equivalent, the closest equivalent to paper, like stacks of paper or folders or whatever in front of you. Hold on, let me just hide that bar. There we are. I think Notion really starts with anything. It can be an infinite canvas with an unlimited number of overwhelming options. But now in the next 15 slides, you'll see a couple applications that we use at optimization in no particular order. So firstly, blogs and writing, that's a very common usage. In this case, you see a blog post that I wrote like 2 years ago. We also use it for CRMs, so tracking clients. And here you see a table essentially of our clients and their HQs and industries and other metadata. We keep track of projects in Notion. So this is a timeline view of like all the ongoing projects at optimization. We keep track of tasks. So this is my personal task list, where you can see in front of me a table of things that are firstly overdue, then need to be done today, already completed, and kind of pinned on the side. We keep track of events and meetings. So this is more of a familiar calendar view. We also host our website on Notion. I know it's not the best website. It's been 2 years that we actually have updated it, so it's coming. A big refresh is coming. But I think the point here is that you can take a Notion page and render it on the web and get optimization.com or super.so, or there's a number of websites out there. We also use it to track meetings. I kind of show that with a calendar, but this is my personal view of meetings. As you can see, I have meetings today or tomorrow or in the next 7 days. We also have agendas as well. This is a team meeting that we host, and we actually come up with a title that's related to like TV and movies. So this one was called Empire Strikes Back, and inside of there you see like toggles with contents about to run the meeting itself. And let me kind of speed through the rest. I think you get the point. You know, we have notes, dashboards, OKRs, handbooks, and wikis, and really conversations as well. Really, any document that you used to sort of create in Microsoft Word or Google Docs or Confluence or Dropbox paper can be recreated and arguably speaking made better in Notion, as well as a few other tools. I know we've got Alchen from Coda here, so Coda is also a good one too. However, I'm not as obsessed with Coda as I am with Notion just yet. So in terms of the difference with other tools, sort of neat transition here. Hopefully those screenshots gave you an idea. And I think the main idea that holds true here is that Notion, and as I mentioned, a few other all-in-one tools, is not a tool really. It's a different mental model, I think, around how tools can be used. So to me, Notion is a toolbox. The Notion founder and CEO in a recent conference said that Notion's mission is to make software toolmaking ubiquitous. Their goal is to help every person and every team on the planet to use software that best fits its needs or their needs. And so that's a big difference between what used to be, because what used to be is that you pick up, say, Trello, and you get a Kanban board, and sure, you can do a number of power-ups or whatever, but fundamentally it's a Kanban board. And fundamentally there's a set number of ways you can interact with it. With Notion, there are no set ways. It's a toolbox that you can create unlimited use cases and uses for. And what I really like is that Notion essentially looks at the past as three. Well, not even Notion. Myself, I'm looking at three categories of getting work done. There's the storage, sort of the cabinet that evolved into desktop computers, and then it evolved into on the cloud like Google Drive and OneDrive and etc. And then there's like ledgers, sort of structured information and like a giant ass book in the past that went into Excel and then into Google Sheets and other tabular apps. And then there's sort of the typewriter and the document aspect that went from written like papers to Word to Google Docs and etc. Notion moves away from that categorization and puts it all together in weird and sometimes not necessarily the most intuitive, but combinator ways that really like combine information. So anyway, that's what I think makes Notion different. But I think being different in that sort of technical sense is not the only thing that Notion has it's going for it. I think there's something else, and there's something special about the software and the company and the people. And to me, is that Notion has a personality. Like you can really feel the brand, not just in the product, but just in the typefaces and the colors, in the swag that you get. Like for Christ's sake, I even got a tattoo of Notion on my hand. It's not a super real tattoo. It's going to disappear in a year. But you know what I mean? Like that sort of brand language really resonated with me, and I think resonates with a lot of people, because there's a giant community out there. Like if you look at the numbers, it's kind of mind-blowing. There's hundreds of thousands of people across the internet fanboying and obsessing over Notion like I do, but also really organizing their life and work and getting things done. The other two things that I just skipped is I think maybe a little bit more obvious, but Notion, I think as a company, as a people, thinks from first principles and really tries to solve problems, in a deeper way. This particular video, I think, illustrates that. And I'm going to play this just for a minute here. hopefully everything will work as planned. Wait, I think I need to share my audio. Give me a second. I love this video. It really shows, I think, not just the power and the ubiquity of the product, but also a sense of like inspiration, and I feel really inspired, with Notion and the product and the organization itself. So I think this is what really makes sort of the secret sauce for Notion, beyond the product. Now we're all here to talk about why Notion is a good fit for founders, for entrepreneurs, for startups and stuff. Just before we go into that, I'd love to hear either in the chat or in the poll, if you wanna launch that, Josh, in terms of the team size that you're all working on. That will help contextualize the remainder part of the presentation. But really, I'd love to know if people are working alone, so solo, if people are working in a pair on their company, so duo, so to say. There's a squad of you all, like, I don't know why I said 6 people, but, not 5. And then, sort of their company sizes. Like, how many people are you working with? That would be helpful for me to know. Okay, we got Francisco in the house. I'm glad you're catching this. Thank you. I appreciate your attendance. 4 full-time, 4 part-time. Many certified Notion pals. Is Pedro one? I don't recognize your. I don't know. Maybe I don't recognize your full name. Awesome. So this is basically Notion nerds learning from Notion nerds. Okay, cool. So mostly people are working alone, and then an equal distribution amongst sort of bigger company sizes. All right. So that's somewhat helpful. But let's go into the conversation about founders a little bit more. I think fundamentally, Notion helps avoid context switching, right? And sort of things that negative associations that come with context switching, searching for documents, resharing documents, remembering where things are. All of that stuff, I think, is busy work. It's just not real work. And that tends to bring upon the death of startups or of consulting gigs or of independent work, because it's just sometimes there's too much friction. So I think a good Notion workspace, and by the way, sometimes there's busy work in just setting up the workspace or endlessly optimizing it. That's true. I'll touch on that a little bit more. But fundamentally, if you are able to set up a simple and a good workspace, I think you're avoiding a lot of that busy work that potentially can crush a startup. To paraphrase Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones, in the game of startups, you either win or you die. And I think Notion helps you avoid dying, and avoid this, all the tools and, but it's those people who are working in teams. Like, I'm sure you're familiar at some point in your career with this, where you just have all these tools that you need to manage and share individual pages and draw individual connections, and it's just not very good. Especially for distributed teams. Given that literally everyone went to distributed, also known as remote, everyone started working remotely in the past 2 years. I think that context that people had, like in the office, in the water cooler, or just in random meetings in person, is lost, and it has to be recreated digitally, and the tools haven't really kept up with it. I do think a good Notion workspace and sort of Notion at least gives you the possibility to create that context. And that's important and helpful. The drawback, or the other side of things, is that there's a big learning curve for Notion. And I took this graphic from Visualize Value. I think a lot of people think of Notion as like, I'm going to start using it and nirvana shall happen. However, that's not necessarily the case. It's a really sometimes tough process, and there's a big learning curve to really adopt Notion. And I think it will really help fundamentally with alignment, with yourself and your work if you're working alone, but also if you're working teams, like with your co-founders or with your teammates. If you're shipping a product or a service, with like the market response, if you probably document it, and that all of that stuff, like essentially, if you distill those interactions into clear documentation and make connections through context in that workspace, things will be, I think, more clear. So all I'm saying is like good information management and decision making solves that, and I think Notion, if you go through that learning curve, will help you attain that. Like, in fact, if you do solve that, this is what you'll be like. Basically, Infinity War, superpower Thanos. And now, hopefully, you were entertained with all those pop culture references. But I do want to take a moment to reflect, because I think it's important to also step back and think about the point of it all, or the purpose. It's easy to get lost in building workspaces and creating those dashboards and databases. I think, at least for me personally, all that stuff has helped me organize myself better than any other tool out there. And that organization, that productivity, that alignment that I gained with myself, with my teammates, with, I think, the market that I serve and the customers that I work with, it has really helped like perform at optimization. Like, we're not by any means a smash hit success. Like, I think we've done well, but we weren't like what's insert startup, I don't know, Snowflake or something like that, or whatever. But me personally, I feel like in the past 2 years, when I started optimization, I also got into a relationship. I also had like immigration issues to deal with. I also gained a ton of weight. I think with this organization, it really helped me like balance all my domains in life and like achieve a certain level of success there. So that's all I'm saying. And I think yeah, that's the point there. In terms of adopting Notion, this is really quick, but there's really two, I think, good times to do that. This is more of an outdated slide, but essentially, when you're starting something new, an organization or a project, give Notion a try, and I think it might be a good thing to adopt because it's so new and different. On the other hand, if things are not working and you're kind of finding yourself dragging along or not loving the system that you have, you're forgetting to use it, it's not really helping you be organized or more productive, ditch it. Just archive it, forget about it, try Notion. Hopefully life will be better. All right, so I'm gonna pause here and maybe get into any questions before I go into a little bit more of a demo of my workspace on a daily. So Josh, how do we want to handle the questions part?
Probably best if people put them in the chat, and just so we're not speaking over each other.
Sure. if there are no questions that pop up right away, what I'm gonna do is just go into the demo and then pause earlier. So, question from Rashid: what app did you use to make this presentation? Looks very neat. Figma. I used Figma, good old Figma, and just not custom, but just like styling that literally put together from Notion's presentations. Key differences. Martin asks, what are the key differences with Miro? So Miro, we use Miro at optimization, and Miro is an unstructured infinite canvas, right? Like for people unfamiliar with Miro, let me open that up and I guess really go into the demo. Seems like there's some trouble loading the boards. Let me see if I can get that in Chrome. Anyway, yeah. So let's see. Let's open something up here in Miro. It's a whiteboard more so than a document, whereas I think Notion is a document. So in Miro, you can do all of this. Have like infinitely scrollable, zoom outable, charts and not even charts. Sorry, matrices and post-its and notes and that kind of stuff, which is great. I think it has a very legitimate use case in contrast to Notion. But Notion is a more structured document. So for example, I'll open my workspace. Like, that is not attainable in Miro. There are some things that you can kind of like get your task list, for example, but there's no way you can like open a task and have these properties and subtasks and conversations in a task, or like, for example, create this, like link another page and all that. So there are limitations for between the two apps, but both have legitimate use cases. All right. So looks like we don't have any questions beyond that. So I'm gonna do a quick demo on a daily usage of Notion for me. So this is TemOS. This is my dashboard. This is the page that I have open 90% of the time. And fundamentally, what I have here is my task list. So we're very, I think, action-driven and task-driven organization. So we make sure to capture to-dos. And right here, what you see is like there's many ways to interpret tasks or manage tasks. For me, this sort of current view captures everything that is 1, overdue, 2, due today, and 3, complete today, or like interacted with today. And I use some fancy formulas to get that sort of result, but that's how it looks. On the right-hand side, there's also tasks, but these are tasks that I've pinned to my dashboard. So ones that I want to see no matter what, unless I actually unpin them. And then there's more different views and different sort of portals into various setups for tasks. But fundamentally, this is what I use most of the time. Beyond that, I have the calendar, which I already shown in an earlier screenshot, but this is simple. This is just my entries from Google Calendar that are here in a database. And how I use this is actually create agendas and memos and stuff that like is the place for people to get aligned. So for example, our team meeting. So I don't think the agenda was actually set up yet, but our team meeting next week, this is the agenda from the past meeting. And then inside of their information goes, and then comments can be left as comments or during the discussion. So one cool thing I love about meetings in Notion is that I can pull in relevant information from other sources. So one thing that we do at optimization and capture announcements and threads. So when making this agenda, I have the most relevant announcements popped up here. And I can easily also navigate, like remove them from context by, doing a certain action. I also see other stuff across the workspace, right? Like projects. I mean, I can pop them up. I see other conversations and what we call as threads. I see action items that I can capture, and I see previous meetings that I can quickly navigate to. So I use meetings a lot and agendas. Then I have some other stuff, but really it boils down to knowledge management. So this is like decisions that need to be made, notes that I'm taking. Similar setup here is like these notes are pinned and these notes are more time-based. You know, this is what I've written today, yesterday, or like last 7 days. Sorry, not written, edited. This is based on edits. And then finally, I have some project management. So really with project management, I interpret it as a way to collect information together. So for example, for this presentation right here, here's how a dashboard looks. You know, I see assets related to the script that I'm talking through right now, the event blurb that we use to market it, the sign up button that I'm going to send at the end of this presentation, the slides and all that. So all of these comes from these databases that I showed you, but they are all contextualized in a nice sort of Doctor Strange type portal. And then finally, besides projects, there's OKRs, you know, which kind of falling behind on a bit, but yeah. So that's how I use Notion daily. There's many multitudes of different ways that me and my team use it. But I'm gonna pause here and see if people want to see something specific, or go somewhere specific, or we might as well call it a day because your brain is probably exploding. So is mine.
So I've got a question. So you're obviously very advanced with this setup that you've got, and with, you know, formulas and cross-referencing databases and things. But if someone's just starting with Notion, what do you think the best way is to get them to this stage to be an advanced Notion user?
I think the goal is not to be an advanced Notion user. I think the goal is to be solving problems with Notion. And so what might be the problem that you're solving with essentially a document tool? And I think the very simple one is documentation. Like, what are the things that you need to write down, whether it's notes, or scripts, or beliefs, or whatever it might be. What do you need to write down? What do you need to organize and make it accessible or shareable, or, you know, capturable? So I think that's the very fundamental start. Just start with capturing whatever you need to capture. And then, you know, documentation, I think, is the easiest start. Or just writing is the easiest start. Maybe you're writing a blog post. You can start writing your drafts in Notion. And then with more and more sort of possibilities, I think you'll get into, I'll stop screen sharing just so you can see. I think you'll get into like what could be more use cases, right? It could be in, as you saw, task management or meeting management or whatever management. I started, so it's kind of like, for me, it's weird because I started with business first and then personal workspace. But I think it's very legitimate, as you saw in that YouTube video, start with a personal workspace and then have it blend into the business at some point, business or organization.
Thank you.
What's been the biggest challenge getting companies using Notion effectively? Oof, that's a big one. Our clients come in a variety of states as it relates to Notion. Some people come in with a dumpster fire of a workspace that they have been using, but documents are all over the place. Things are unstandardized, unformatted, inconsistent, and really defeating the purpose of Notion, because it's the same thing as if they would use other tools or other ways of organizing. So it's a bad spot. So getting from that spot to a clean workspace, I think, is a challenge, especially because, you know, people sometimes are reluctant to learn a tool well, because they just want to get the job done. They don't really care about the tool. So kind of striking that balance between here's why the tool is good and you should learn these features, to here's how you solve the problem that you have in front of you. I think has been one of the challenges, but there are many others. I'll leave it at that. I think we can go deeper into other things. I see a question from Sabine. What component of Notion do you use the most? Which do you start with? Start with a database or list? So it depends on the context of where you're. No, I'm gonna say list, like in terms of like actually bulleted list, because I think we've also noticed with clients is that databases are the most overwhelming thing, and a thing that doesn't like click as well as normal documents. And normal documents being Google Docs and Microsoft Word, of course, is just text, bullet points, images, and all that. I think you start there, and then once you create that content and familiarize yourself with like how Notion tables work, then you can start like say you have like a bulleted list of like 10 places that you like to go in the city. You move that into a database, and then like I think a light bulb might light up. I was like, okay, so we've got places. Maybe we want to put a Google link. Maybe we want to put their opening times. Maybe we put one of this things that you cannot otherwise attain with a bulleted list. I think in a personal use case that makes the most sense. And yeah, that's hopefully that answers. For visual people, by the way, like artists and designers and etc., with gallery view is great, because you can manipulate like a set of images in front of you and make it look good for whatever use case. All right. If we don't have any other questions, I'm gonna pop into the chat a certain link. Here's one more question. Okay. Well, before I answer that, let me still pop that link in the chat. What I'm gonna do. So right now, like, here's the use case. I have a link for people to like press, to like, if they want to subscribe to the newsletter, I need to find it. So for me, I know that it's like part of this project. So I open the project, and then I know like I saved it like as an asset here. So here's the link, and there I have it in front of me. Didn't need to like save it anywhere or anything like that. But this link, by the way, is a subscription form for a newsletter that will eventually come out. It's been 2 years in the making, but essentially what we're going to talk about is like this stuff, Notion use cases, knowledge management for companies and individuals. I think we'll share more about like optimization as well, that kind of stuff. So please do subscribe if you're into it. Whoops, somebody's email showed up there. But as you see, by the way, just the subscription form worked. Luca, oh wait, so before Luca, I need to address another question. It says, what is your general approach for organizing information? Ooh, that's a good one. That is a good one. There's a few frameworks out there. I'm going to say that our framework at Optimization is still in the works. It's still 2 years in the works. But I started with Para. So Para is a framework that was developed by this fella named Tiago Forte, and he's one of the, I want to say, like internet productivity, like pioneers. He runs a course called Building a Second Brain, and what Para stands for is projects, areas, resources, and archive. And so I remember starting with that, sort of defining the areas that the business operates in, the projects that are within, and then the components of that. Me personally, I'm starting to sort of mix in a few things from a book called Atomic Habits. Personally, I try to organize myself around atomic habits. So like recurring things that I need to do individually every day. That's my personal workspace. But in the business, I kind of sort of twisted the definition a little bit and wondered like, what are the most atomic units of work for us? And it's pretty simple. It's tasks that we need to do, notes that we need to take, and events that we need to interact with. And so that's 3 core databases of the workspace. Let's see. How did you find your first customers for optimization? What kind of companies are they? Are they all startups? Luca asks. I first customer ever was from optimization customer, meaning kind of agency, was from Twitter. Nick Sharma, who's like a D2C direct to consumer consultant and agency owner, posted that he's interested into Notion, finding a Notion consultant. I Twitter DM'd him, send him a proposal, and he said, okay. So that was the first ever optimization customer. To get to that point, I was marketing myself on Twitter because I was a Notion ambassador. And so like I would host events and then show them off on Twitter and then get some followers on that end. Are all my companies clients our client startups? Not necessarily. Some of them are venture capital firms. Some of them are big companies like Discord and Commerce Hub. But really, I think the common theme is smaller teams that have enough bandwidth to learn and to learn the tool, and also budget to pay a consultant. Let's see. Where do you see no-code Notion going into the next decade, and what are some of your future-proofing methodologies at optimization? Great question. I have no idea, especially that last one, future-proofing. I'm very much shoot from the hip type person. But one way that I think we really future-proofed, so to say, is ran a process of discovering like our identity. So somebody recently kind of shared a framework with me that was like, when you're running a business, or really in many decisions, you can do what's reasonable or you can do what's rational. And so our rational path for optimization was to push the gas pedal and like acquire as many Notion centric customers and build as many databases or whatever. But we took a step back and like kind of paused sales and just decided to like figure out what in the world do we want to do. And I'm also going to share that real quick, the process around that. So it started with a resource. So I have this database of resources. And it was an article by Harvard Business Review called Building Your Company's Vision. So I read that and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And, I highlighted through the article, I left comments, I had conversations with my team, and I was like, okay, we need to set this up for ourselves. So, like your vision, your mission, your values, etc. See, I took some notes, figured out what companies inspire me, what's the purpose, etc. And then what we did across the company. So I actually have this collected for an eventual marketing post. So let me share that here. There we are. So what happened afterwards was we ran a survey across the team. And it was a team input. So it was like a tally form embedded. And so, we were asking people like, what values do you hold for yourself? What this, what that, like kind of get those collected. After that, we looked at that data and essentially came up with a thread to share with the company. And I was like, here is the draft of our mission and vision and values. And here, this is literally what we actually shared and discussed. I kind of like, I resolved all the comments, but there was a bunch of comments here. And we were talking about it very actively. One thing I did to really concentrate on our values was to figure out like sort of proof. And I created a database of receipts. And sort of these receipts were like a card to prove that we actually stood for that value, of conscientiousness, of openness, of autonomy, system thinking, etc. And so the end result, what we had is this, essentially a front page statement on like, here's our vision, here's our mission, here's our values. And so that might not necessarily like be the right answer to, the obvious answer to what future proof is, but I think really aligning together on what is in the world we want to achieve why is it worth achieving and how are we going to go about achieving, I think was one of the best investments of a lot of time and energy for the company.
Great answer. Thanks for that.
Okay. So what else do we have there? Oh, well, I didn't really answer like where's no code and Notion going in the next decade. I'm pretty trash at predictions. So I guess I don't really know, but I think, to use sort of like the Jeff Bezos framework, like what is not going to change in the future, I think Notion's usage is going to keep growing, and the relevance of no code and the widespread adoption is just going to keep growing. It just makes too much sense that people, will be willing to create things, for themselves, whether it's apps or workflows or systems or databases, and just getting increasingly easier. So I think eventually just everyone is going to be a creator of their own workspaces. I think that's a pretty profound impact. I think, right now people are consumers of workspaces. They jump into Asana or Trello or whatever, but in the future they're going to be the creators of their own workspace. And it has a lot of implications that I'm not sure yet what they are. Just curious. Rashid asks, do I use Notion for personal health and fitness? Kinda. I'm improving that, but here's what I have for. So first of all, I try to separate my work Chrome for individual Chrome. So I have this, and this is my personal dashboard, and it's way less sophisticated than my work one. But as far as health and fitness, I keep track of intake, so everything I eat. Where is this? Consumption, right? Yeah, consumption database. So here I have essentially a picture and some metadata for everything I consume in a week, or I guess in a month, and I can really assess it on a few things, primarily healthiness. So is it healthy? Is it neutral? Is it unhealthy? And then some metadata about like what's the composition of the meal? What's the status? Did I eat all of it? Did I eat some of it, most of it? Did I share it? And am I overeating? So that's how I track consumption. And my personal workspace is definitely like in the works. And I really feel like I can get to a good place where I can track things that I eat, the exercise that I do, and really help me attain my physical goals much not faster, I think more consistently.
You missed one question in the chat earlier, which was from Sabine, which says, do you believe certification is essential in growing your practice or business?
What was that last part? In certification essential for what?
Do you believe certification is essential in growing your practice or business? So I guess
is it for Notion consulting or any type of consulting?
So. I guess it's related to consulting or agency work.
Well, so what is certification? I think for Notion it's more a badge for sort of legitimacy, validation personally too, and validation for the market as well, and also really concretely helpful helpful mechanisms. Like, for example, Notion has this form where people submit interest in consultant, and then they match you with consultants. So that's really helpful. Seeing your profile on the notion.so/consultants is really helpful exposure too. So in that sense, it's been incredibly helpful. But, and by the way, the page is notion.so/consultants, I believe. Yeah. But is it essential to deliver the service? Yes and no. First of all, yes, because there's a test that you need to pass. And I think that test definitely evaluates how well are you able to create successful outcomes for clients. I think that's a very important part. And no, because even if you know Notion 50% of what I or Ben or other consultants know, that's already way more than the person entering Notion for the first time. So I think you can really help people bridge the gap in the beginning, and maybe learn together. That's not always guarantees a successful outcome, but if you level expectations, that might be a good project or a good consulting gig. On many of our projects, I think we're learning, just because the industry is new and these type of projects is something that we've never really done, or anyone has done. So that's the truth here. Rashid asks, do you know when a Google Calendar integration is coming? So technically speaking, you can leverage the Notion API as well as the no-code automation tools like Zapier, Make, and a few others. Don't use Automate because they're shutting down. But you can pipe data from Google Calendar to Notion, sort of build your own integration in the spirit of no-code. Notion is coming out with something officially, I think, in the next couple months. So there's no clear timeline, but what that will enable you to do is take a Google Calendar link, paste it in Notion, and then get it automatically synced. So I don't know when is it coming. So I guess that's the answer.
We're almost out of time, so are there any last questions? Doesn't look like it, so.
Like now.
Awesome.
Can we get some outro music?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, awesome.
There's one last question. Any tips for streamlining a Notion workspace for clients new to Notion? Oh
boy, that's a packed one. That's a packed one. Let me say one tip. I think personalization. Notion enables personalization in a way that many other apps don't. And that starts with icons, starts with cover pages, that extends into colors, into columns and GIFs and whatever formatting, might make sense to people. I think if you can encourage folks to personalize, upload a profile picture, make sure that the space that they're working in, even if they're just starting, feels comfortable, intriguing, and motivating to actually, use the workspace. That's something that Notion's sort of elegance and design and brand encourages, and not many other software are able to accomplish that. So I think that's pretty important. So that's not very functional at all. That's more of a feeling and more of a nice to have thing. Ben's right. I like Ben's point, especially starting with meeting notes. Simplest use case makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks, Tem, for joining us. That was once again mind-blowing. I think the consumption database is the one that blew my mind.
I use notionforms.io. Got to plug that in. It's a great tool.
All right. Okay. Oh, yeah. I was wondering about that. So this has been recorded. We'll be sharing it in the No Code Founders newsletter next week. If you're not subscribed to that, you can subscribe at nocodefounders.com. So thank you, Tem, once again. We have another webinar running in 2 weeks' time, which I'll just share in the chat just now, which is going to be building Web3 products using Builder. So you can register for that. But thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you at the next one.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.